Hello and welcome. Today I'd like to show you a way to modify Synty low poly assets in the Unity editor using a free tool called ProBuilder. Synty assets are very popular in the Unity ecosystem and you can choose from a huge variety of different themes and you have tons of different assets. Still, sometimes a specific asset is just missing for your game and the question is how to get it. You can either model it from scratch or you can take an existing asset and modify it. ProBuilder is originally intended as a prototyping tool, but it's perfectly fine to modify low poly assets like the one coming from Synty. And you don't have the hassle to export the model to an external 3D modeling tool like Blender and then re-import it. You can simply stay in the Unity environment. And I have two examples from my own game Beans and Bones. In one case I required a coconut and I've taken an orange and modified it to become a coconut. This example is simple from the modeling itself, but I show you some things that can go wrong when importing a Synty model into ProBuilder, and I also explain some core modeling and texturing techniques. The second example is a little more complex from the modeling perspective. For my game I required an open barrel which the player can use to paddle around. So I take an existing closed barrel, remove the top and model the inside of the barrel. Okay, so here we are in Unity and I already created a new scene. I added this blue plane just to make life a little easier, and I also added 3 objects. This orange, this barrel and the sign. I will modify the orange and the barrel, and I need the sign to explain some texturing properties. So if you haven't done, you have to install ProBuilder first. So open Package Manager, then select the Unity registry and search for ProBuilder. So I've already installed it. If you haven't, then you have the option to install it here. Click it, wait until it's done, and then go back to your scene. So before we start modeling, a quick tip and reminder how to efficiently navigate in the Unity editor. If you select an object and then hit the F key, the editor will focus on the object, and in addition, the pivot point for the camera will be set to this object. So if you now hit Alt and the left mouse key, then you can rotate around this object. If you zoom out and select another object, then the camera will still rotate around the old pivot point. So now hit again the F key if you want to rotate around this barrel, and then with Alt and the left mouse button you can rotate around this barrel. So we want to start with the orange, so we focus on that again, and then we want to open the ProBuilder menu. So go to Tools, ProBuilder, and open the ProBuilder window. And then I recommend to put it here to the left and minimize in this way. I selected the orange as a basis because the shape is very close to the one of a coconut, including the green husk. And the first thing that I want to do is I duplicate the orange, because first of all I want to keep a reference for the size of my coconut, and you will see soon an issue that you can run into using ProBuilder. Then I select the orange I want to model and unpack the prefab because I don't want to screw up the prefab. And to know which object I'm talking about, I rename it to coconut. And then I'm disabling the mesh collider just to make life easier. Now the first step for modeling is to ProBuilderize it. You see the button here, and what you will see is up here on the mesh renderer you see it uses the orange mesh. And if I now hit ProBuilderize, then you will see that down here a new ProBuilder mesh filter will be added and a new mesh will be generated based on the orange mesh. Now so far everything looks fine. But if we rotate around this orange, you will see something strange. You see that this triangle has a strange texturing. Now to see what's going on, you have to understand two things. The first thing is that ProBuilder modifies the mesh during import. ProBuilder offers 2 options for the import. So let me show you the 2 options. I will select the original orange and make another duplicate. Now I can ProBuilderize it, but you see this plus sign here. And if I select this, the main option is whether you want to import quads or not. What does it mean? You see on the original mesh, it uses quads a lot. And these quads are an essential part of the Synty look and feel. Now, if I deselect import quads, what will happen if I now ProBuilderize the other copy? So I hit on it. And what you will see is now the mesh is subdivided always into triangles. Now what you also see is now that we don't have the strange artifact on this orange up here. So you have a triangle that's orange and one that's green up here. While over here we have this green triangle and then this strange coloring or texturing. Now the problem with the triangulation is that it easily gives a completely different look and feel of an object, especially in this low poly design. Now if we select this import quads option, ProBuilder will do two things. The first thing is it will import quads where there are quads in the mesh, and it will import triangles where there are triangles in the mesh. But in addition, and this is what happens up here, if two adjacent triangles lie in the same plane, then ProBuilder will combine these two triangles to build a quad. And this is what happens over here. We have just one quad up here. So how can we fix it? First of all, let's focus on this orange. Then you need to understand some modeling terminology. A mesh is made up of these points, and in modeling they are called vertices. Up here you have these different options. This option here is if you want to select different vertices. Now the connections between vertices are called edges, and you can select this with the edge selection. So if I now select an edge, you see that's highlighted, and I select this one, then this one is highlighted. And the areas between edges are called faces in modeling. So with this tool I can select a certain face. Now the issue is here that we only have a single face and we want to have triangles up here, two triangles. So the way to do this is to select this vertex and the vertex on the other side, and then go over here, connect vertices. Then you will see that a new edge has been created between these 2 points. And now if I go to face selection, I have the option to select this triangle or this triangle. Now we have to fix this coloring or texturing issue. And for that you need to understand that there are different ways of texturing the faces. The most simple way would be to create a material with a single color in Unity and assign it to a face. The more advanced way is to use a texture, which is basically an image file, and then to assign a certain area of this texture file to a face. And to understand this, let me select the sign and I focus on it. Then I ProBuilderize it. And now I can select the different faces. Let me open up the UV editor. This is the tool to map a face to a certain area of a texture. So let me put it up here. So what you see up here is the image file or the texture that's used for all assets coming with the Synty Pirate pack. And if I zoom in here, you see up here that this face is mapped to this area of the texture file. And if I select the adjacent and then select island, or it's mapped to the other island up here. And this assignment of faces to areas on the texture is called UV mapping. Now for low poly objects, there's an additional option that makes life easier to assign different colors to faces. And you see most of the faces have just a single color. So let's go back to our coconut model, go to face select, select this face and go to the UV editor and zoom in again. Then you will see that this face is mapped to a single color. So this area on the texture is collapsed to a single point. And this allows you to easily assign these different color schemes to a model. Now what happened up here? In the original model, this face up here has a green color. On the face down here, it should be the orange color. But now as ProBuilder has combined this face for this face down here, it shows all the colors that are on the connection between the green and the orange ones. Now, how to fix it? We select this face and then we have this option down here, collapse UV. If I select this line will collapse to a single point, and I now can move this point and move it also to the orange color over here. And now you see, if I deselect it, that this face is orange again. So now that we fixed this problem, we can start changing our model. We want to modify this object in two ways. First of all, we want to change the color. So we want, instead of orange, we want to have a green color, and instead of the green color up here, we want a kind of brown color. And if you look to the bottom, you will see that also down here you have different colors, so we want also this to be brown. Go to face selection, select the face, and then hit all. Now we have selected the complete object, but we don't want to change the color up here. So we deselect the faces up here using Shift and left mouse click, and we go down here and we deselect the three faces down here as well. Now we have select only the orange faces. Now, if you look to the menu, you see there's an option to select by color, but this option doesn't work if you work with textures. It only works if you assigned solid colors or materials with solid colors to the faces. Then this option will select all the faces with the same material assigned. Now, to make life easier, you can collapse the UVs again. And that means that all the faces that you have just selected are merged into a single point on the UV map. I hit collapse UVs. So if I now select a single face, all the faces I have collapsed are changed at once. This makes life easier to assign a color and directly see how it looks like. Now, if I have changed the color, you can split up the UVs again. Simply select all faces and then go to split UVs. And now if I select a single face and move the mapping around, you will see that only this single face is affected. Now select a face up here, and I want to have kind of brownish color. So I'm zooming out a little bit. So I'm moving over here somewhere. And you see these faces are brown. Down here, I can leave it to the color it's already given. So now you understand how to change the coloring of your Synty models. Now the next step is to rescale the object. So it has the correct coloring now, but what I want to have is a coconut, which is a bit larger than an orange. And I want to scale the model and not the prefab afterwards. You can always scale with using the transform, but I want to scale the model. So what you have to do is ensure to select the faces, then select all faces, and then you can use the same commands as with a transform. You can either move them around or rotate them using the E key, or press the R key, and then you can scale it and simply take the middle, and then you can scale everything a little more. Let's see. So that's why it's good to have this reference that you see, okay, this is even a little bigger. Now I just want to stretch this in the Y direction a little bit, and then I type W and move it up so it's still on the ground. So that seems to be reasonable. And now I have a coconut. In the same way, you can also select, for instance, edges and move them around. You see then the whole model changes. But for me, this is sufficient enough to look like a coconut. So I'm done with the modeling, and now I want to use this coconut in my game. What I can do now is export the model. So I select the whole object, and then you have this plus sign for the different formats, and you can export it as an object file or as an asset. I select prefab, that's what you're typically looking for. In my case, I don't have any children, so I don't need to select this. Then select the object, go to export. I'm just putting it into the asset folder and put save. And then you see down here, there are two new files generated. The one is the coconut prefab, and the other is the mesh that has been generated for this coconut. And if I open this coconut prefab, then you will see up here in the mesh filter, it uses the coconut mesh that I've modified based on the orange mesh. And it's still using the material that comes with the farm pack, so I don't have to create another material. So now let's look at the barrel, where I show you some additional modeling techniques, but also we apply the texturing technique just shown in the first example. Okay. So let's see how I can remove the top up here so it becomes an open barrel and I can put my player in it to pedal around. So as before, let's move out a little, duplicate the barrel and move it a little away to keep the reference. Then I'm renaming this barrel to open barrel. And again, I unpack the prefab, so I'm not messing with the original prefab. Move it a little further away. And then, as before, make sure that the import quads is enabled to keep this typical Synty look and feel, and then hit ProBuilderize. You can ignore this warning down here, just disable the mesh collider. And now we really want to change the mesh and do something that's a little more complicated than just rescaling an object like we did with the orange or coconut. Go to face selection, focus on the object so we can easily move around. And now you can select this and multi-select with shift mouse click. And first of all, we want to remove all the faces up here. It's a little tedious to really get all the different faces because some are a little hidden. For instance, this one down here and here. There's still one. No, there's still one. And there's one. And if you have selected all, then you can just select the delete key and remove them. And then you see that over here, there are still some left. So I have to select them. So now that we have removed the top, you see that geometry is missing inside the barrel. The original model has been modeled just from the outside. And you see here you have a face that has a color. But if you look from the other side, you see that the face is not rendered. It's just transparent. So what you see here, this blue, is just the blue of the plane that I've added. So what we need to do now is to model the inside of the barrel. So we need to add some new geometry or new faces. So how can we do it? Go to edge selection. And what we need to do, we need new faces that continue from this rim down here. Go back to the edge selection, select one of these edges that are free, and then you have the options to select holes. And in this case, it will select this ring here that includes all the faces that are now free. Now we want to add some new geometry. What we can do is we can extrude these edges. Down here we have extrude edges. So to each selected edge, we will add a new face. Now you can decide how much or how big the faces should be that you add. So if you select extrude edge, the plus sign here, then you see the distance. This is typically 0.5. So that means the face would be 0.5 units big. And this is too big for me. I'm adding just 0.1. Click extrude edges. Now what you see is new faces have been added to these edges. But again, we have this strange texturing. So let's fix this. Go to the UV editor. And you see down here, it has automatically taken the new faces and mapped them down here in this corner. Now again, we want to collapse the mapping to single points. Go to face selection, select this face, and to select all the newly created faces, select single face and go over to select face ring. Now you see all the newly created faces have been selected. And then I can go over here, convert to manual. I want to manually do the UV mapping. And then I can go to collapse UVs. And then I can move them around. And if I remember correctly, the correct color is around here. So let's select one of the old faces. Go to select island and you see down here this brown tone. That's exactly the same as we have selected down here. So we now have all the new faces with the same color as the existing ones. So now we want to push these new faces down so they become the new inside walls of this barrel. Again, select an edge, select whole, so it will select all. And now you can move the faces or the edges down. Again, scale them. So we want push them to the outside, not too much, so they are still within the inside of the barrel. Push them a little further down. And now we can repeat the step. So we can extrude the edges. We have the same as before. Select a face. Select face ring. You see now it's done the mapping again. Convert to manual. Collapse UVs and move them to this color that the others have. And again, now we can select whole so that we have the ring. Push it down. Now we have reached the bottom. We can scale it again. And now there's an option that I'm using over here, and I can say fill hole, and it will create a new face as the bottom of the barrel. And again, select this face, convert to manual, collapse, move the collapse point over to the correct color. So now we have done the basic modeling, but you see I've gone a little too low with my bottom. So we have some overlapping with the existing faces. So select the face down here and move it up a little. So now we don't have any overlap anymore. Now you could do two things. First of all, you can move some of the vertices around so that the shape looks more irregular. So select a face, select a vertex and move it a little up and down. And in this way, the inside would look more like the original irregular shapes. And the other thing is to split up the bottom down here. So select the face, focus on it. And we want to split it up by adding new edges. So go to vertex selection. I select this vertex and I want to split up the bottom so that I have quads here as well. So take these 2 points and then go to connect vertices. Now I have a new shape down here that has 4 vertices, so makes up a quad. Select this one and this one, go to connect vertices and again another quad. So I'm simply continuing down the bottom. And finally the last quad. You can now select an edge and for instance move it up a little so that the bottom becomes also a little more irregular. In the inside of the barrel it's probably not necessary because most of the time you don't really see it. In my case the player will occupy most of the visible area here. But I need the geometry inside the barrel to add a collider so that my player doesn't fall through the barrel. And the last step again, select the whole object, then export it to a prefab. I leave the name to open barrel prefab, save it. And if I now have my open barrel, I put it here. See, the inside is there. I also have a mesh collider. I want to disable a convex mesh. So it takes the open barrel mesh. And now I have a mesh completely also inside my barrel. If I disable the mesh renderer, you will see the mesh of the collider. So now I have also a mesh collider inside the barrel and my player won't fall through the barrel. So hope the tutorial was helpful. If you liked it, give it a thumb up and consider subscribing to my channel.